The morning light streaming through our kitchen window felt like a spotlight on my shame as I fumbled with my keys at 6:47 a.m. My black cocktail dress from the night before clung to me like evidence, wrinkled and smelling of cigarette smoke and another man's cologne. My stiletto heels dangled from my fingers as I tried to slip inside unnoticed, but Henry was already there, sitting at our breakfast table, with his coffee growing cold, my phone in his hands. "Good morning, Desdemona," he said quietly, his accountant's precision evident even in those 3 words. His brown eyes, usually warm behind his wire-rimmed glasses, were cold as winter stones. "Elliot sent you a message." My stomach dropped like a stone into dark water. On my phone screen, I could see the preview notification glowing accusingly. "Had a great night. Can't wait for next time." The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in around us. Our daughter Maya's artwork covered the refrigerator behind Henry. Innocent crayon drawings of our family, all 3 of us holding hands under a bright yellow sun. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Henry, I can explain," I started, but he held up his hand. "Can you? Because I've been sitting here for 3 hours trying to come up with an innocent explanation for why my wife disappeared all night and is receiving romantic messages from a man I've never heard of." It had started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself, as I applied another coat of red lipstick in our hallway mirror. After 7 years of marriage to Henry and his predictable routines, his early bedtimes and weekend budget spreadsheets, I felt like I was suffocating in suburban quicksand. At 32, I was drowning in monotony while my single friends were still living their best lives, posting Instagram stories from trendy bars and exotic vacations. "I'm going out for drinks with the girls from work," I had announced that Friday evening, smoothing down my dress. The black one Henry had bought me for our anniversary, but that I'd never worn for him. "Sarah's been having a rough time with her divorce, and we want to cheer her up." Henry looked up from where he was helping 7-year-old Maya with her math homework at our dining room table. His hair was already thinning at 35, and he wore the same style of button-down shirt he'd been wearing since college. Safe, predictable, boring. "What time will you be home?" he asked, adjusting his glasses in that way he did when he was concentrating. "Not late, probably around 10, maybe 11 at the latest." "Okay, drive safely. Text me when you get there." "Of course," I lied easily, already mentally planning to ignore that request. But Elliot's bar downtown had other plans for me. The moment I walked through the heavy wooden doors and saw Elliot Warren behind the polished mahogany bar, all dangerous charm and practiced smile, I felt electricity I hadn't experienced in years. He was everything Henry wasn't: spontaneous, flirtatious, exciting, with the kind of bad boy energy that made my pulse race. "What's a beautiful woman like you doing drinking alone on a Friday night?" he asked, sliding me a perfectly crafted martini I hadn't ordered. His hands were strong and tanned, with a small tattoo of a compass on his wrist. "Escaping," I said, and meant every letter of that word. The hours melted away like ice in summer heat. We talked about everything: my dreams of traveling, my frustration with suburban life, my feeling of being trapped in someone else's idea of happiness. Elliot listened with an intensity Henry hadn't shown me in years, his green eyes never leaving my face. My phone buzzed constantly throughout the evening. Henry checking in, asking when I'd be home. Each text felt like a chain around my ankle, dragging me back toward responsibility and routine. "It's getting late. Maya's asking for you." "Des, it's midnight. Are you okay?" "Please just let me know you're safe. I'm worried." "It's 2 a.m. I'm starting to panic. Please respond." I showed Elliot the messages, rolling my eyes dramatically. "See what I deal with? He treats me like I'm his property, like I can't make my own decisions." "Sounds controlling," Elliot agreed, refilling my glass with expensive whiskey. "You're a grown woman. You should be able to have fun without checking in every 5 minutes like a teenager." "Exactly. Thank you." I felt validated in a way I hadn't in months. He's always been like this, suspicious, jealous, trying to keep me locked up in our perfect little suburban prison. By 2 a.m., the bar was closing, but I wasn't ready for the night to end. When Elliot suggested we continue the conversation at his apartment above the bar, I didn't hesitate. I told myself this was just what I needed. Attention, excitement, someone who saw me as more than just Henry's wife and Maya's mother. His apartment was small but stylish, with exposed brick walls and vintage concert posters. When he poured us wine and put on jazz music, I felt sophisticated and desirable in a way I'd forgotten was possible. "You're not happy," he said, sitting close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and dangerous. "No," I admitted. "I feel like I'm disappearing, becoming invisible in my own life." When Elliot kissed me, I kissed back, pushing away thoughts of my family sleeping at home. His hands tangled in my hair, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. I didn't leave until dawn broke over the city skyline, painting everything golden and new. "It's not what it looks like," I said, snatching my phone from Henry's hands with more force than necessary. My voice sounded shrill even to my own ears, echoing off our kitchen's white subway tiles. "Then what is it, Desdemona?" Henry's voice remained unnaturally calm, which somehow made everything worse. When he got quiet like this, it meant he was thinking, analyzing, building a case like he did with his accounting clients. "You said you'd be home by 10, 11 at the latest. It's almost 7 in the morning." We went to another bar after the first one closed. You know how Sarah gets when she's upset about the divorce. She needed to talk, and I couldn't just abandon her. The lies came easily now, flowing like water from a broken dam. And then her car wouldn't start in the parking lot, so I had to help her figure out a ride situation. And by then it was so late, I didn't want to wake you, so I just crashed on her couch. "Which bar?" The question caught me off guard. "What? Which bar did you go to after the first one? What's it called?" I felt heat creeping up my neck. I don't remember the name. Some dive place Sarah knew about. Why does it matter? And who's Elliot? The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire I couldn't put out. I could feel my face flushing, but I forced myself to look indignant rather than guilty. "He's the bartender from the first place. He was just being friendly, making sure we got home safe." "God, Henry, do you hear yourself? You're acting completely paranoid." "I'm acting concerned about my wife who disappeared all night without a word. I'm a grown woman. I don't need to check in every 5 minutes like some teenager with a curfew." I slammed my purse down on our granite countertop, hoping the noise would mask the tremor in my voice. Maybe if you weren't so boring and controlling, I wouldn't need to go out to have actual fun for once in my life. Henry flinched like I'd slapped him, and I felt a twisted satisfaction at finally getting a reaction from Mr. Perfect. But then his face went blank again, that professional accountant's mask sliding back into place. "Maya heard you come in," he said quietly, glancing toward the stairs. "She was worried. She came into our room around 3 asking where Mommy was." Guilt stabbed at me like a physical pain, but I pushed it away. I couldn't afford to feel guilty right now. She's fine. Kids are resilient. One night won't traumatize her. "Are we fine, Des?" The question caught me completely off guard. For a moment, I saw something vulnerable in Henry's brown eyes, something that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with him in the first place. He'd been so steady then, so reliable after a string of unreliable boyfriends, but now that steadiness felt like quicksand. "We're fine if you stop making mountains out of molehills," I said, heading toward the stairs. "I'm going to shower and change. I have things to do today." "What things?" I paused on the bottom step. "Excuse me?" "What things do you have to do? It's Saturday morning. I thought we could take Maya to the park, maybe have lunch somewhere nice. Spend time together as a family." The word family felt like an accusation. "I might meet Carla for shopping. She's been wanting to hit that new outlet mall." Behind me, I heard Henry's chair scrape against the hardwood floor, but I didn't turn around. I didn't see him quietly photographing the contents of my purse with his phone. The bar receipt time-stamped at 3:17 a.m. The business card, with Elliot's personal number scrawled on the back in his confident handwriting. I didn't see him carefully documenting the lipstick stain on my dress collar or the way my hair was still styled from the night before. I was too busy planning my next lie, my next escape, my next taste of the freedom I'd found in Elliot's arms. 2 weeks later, Henry's mother Linda was hosting her annual summer barbecue, a tradition I'd grown to dread over our 7 years of marriage. Linda Vale had never quite warmed to me, and I'd always suspected she thought her precious son could have done better. Today, her disapproval seemed to radiate from across the perfectly manicured backyard, like heat from a furnace. "Desdemona looks tired," I overheard her saying to Henry's brother Brian as they stood by the grill. Linda was 60 but looked younger, with silver hair she kept in a perfect bob and the kind of understated elegance that came from old money. "Is everything all right at home?" I plastered on my brightest smile and joined their conversation, inserting myself between them with practiced ease. "Everything's perfect. Just been busy with work and social commitments lately. You know how it is. Can't be a hermit forever, right?" Linda's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose slightly. "Of course, dear. Balance is important in marriage." The word marriage felt loaded coming from her lips. I wondered what Henry had told her, if anything. Henry appeared at my elbow with a plate of food, potato salad, grilled chicken, corn on the cob. But he felt like a stranger. We'd barely spoken since that morning 2 weeks ago, moving around each other like polite roommates sharing space but nothing else. "Thanks, honey," I said loudly, making sure Linda heard the endearment. I even stood on my toes to kiss his cheek, but he turned slightly so my lips barely grazed his skin. "You're welcome," he said flatly, then walked away toward where Maya was playing with her cousins on the swing set. That's when I spotted Elliot across the yard, talking to Brian's girlfriend Jenny, and my heart jumped like a teenager seeing her crush in the hallway. What was he doing here? "Oh my God, Elliot!" I called out, perhaps too enthusiastically. Several family members turned to look. "What are you doing here?" "Jenny invited me," he said, gesturing to Brian's girlfriend with that easy smile that had first attracted me. "Small world, right? I had no idea you'd be here." But something in his eyes suggested otherwise. Had he known? Had he come here specifically to see me? "Let me introduce you to everyone," I said, linking my arm through his before I could stop myself. The contact sent electricity through my body. "This is my sister-in-law's friend, Elliot. He's absolutely hilarious. He tells the best stories." I spent the next hour at Elliot's side, laughing too loudly at his stories, touching his arm when he made jokes, making sure everyone could see how much fun I was having. When he complimented my sundress, a new yellow one I'd bought specifically hoping to run into him somewhere, I did a little spin, basking in the attention like a flower turning toward the sun. "Your husband seems like a good guy," Elliot said quietly during a lull in conversation, glancing toward Henry, who was helping Maya navigate the monkey bars. "He's stable," I said with a shrug, watching Henry patiently encourage our daughter. "Sometimes a girl needs more than stable, you know. Sometimes you need passion, excitement, someone who makes you feel alive." Elliot's smile was knowing, dangerous. "I definitely know what you mean." Later, when I was getting drinks from the cooler, Linda appeared beside me like a well-dressed ghost. "That young man seems very interested in you," she said, her voice carefully neutral, but her meaning clear. "Elliot, he's just friendly. Some people are naturally charismatic. Not everyone can be as reserved as your son. Henry is a good man, Desdemona. He loves you and Maya very much. He's built a stable life for his family." "I know that," I snapped, then caught myself and modulated my tone. "I mean, of course I know that. We're very happy together. Elliot's just a friend." But Linda's knowing look suggested she saw right through me, just like she always had. As the evening wound down and guests began leaving, I noticed Henry talking quietly with his mother near the back door. Linda handed him something, a manila folder thick with papers, and they both glanced in my direction. My stomach clenched with sudden anxiety, but I forced myself to keep smiling and waving goodbye to departing relatives. What could they possibly have to discuss that required documentation? Monday morning brought unexpected complications that made my coffee taste like ash in my mouth. I was barely settled at my desk in the open plan office, where I worked as an administrative assistant, when my coworker Sarah approached with an uncomfortable expression. "Des, I need to ask you something," she said, glancing around nervously at our cubicles. Sarah was a genuine friend, one of the few people at work I actually trusted. "That night 2 weeks ago, you told your husband you were out with me, right?" My blood turned to ice water in my veins. "What do you mean?" "Someone called here on Friday asking about you. They wanted to verify your story about our girls' night out." Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't know what to say, so I told the truth. That I went home early that night around 9:30, and you stayed at the bar. "Who called? What did they say exactly?" "They didn't leave a name. Said they were verifying some information about your whereabouts that evening. It sounded official, like maybe insurance or something. But I knew it wasn't insurance. Henry was building a case, documenting my lies with the same methodical precision he brought to his accounting work. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of anxiety and paranoia. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. Every time someone walked past my desk, I wondered if they knew about my deception. The fluorescent office light seemed too bright, too exposing. At lunch, I got a text from Elliot that made my pulse race despite everything. "Can't stop thinking about Saturday. Coffee later. I want to hear all about your family drama." Despite the mounting evidence that my world was falling apart, I felt that familiar flutter of excitement. "Can't today. Too much going on. Rain check." "Always making me wait. Good thing you're worth it." I was smiling at my phone when my supervisor, Janet, appeared beside my desk like a bad omen. "Desdemona, HR needs to see you for a few minutes." The walk to the HR office felt like a death march. The HR director, a stern woman named Patricia, gestured for me to sit across from her imposing desk. "We've received some concerns about your attendance and personal conduct during work hours," she said without preamble. "Nothing formal at this point, but we wanted to address it before it becomes an issue." "What kind of concerns?" "Reports that you've been taking excessive personal calls, arriving late, leaving early. Also some questions about your honesty regarding time off requests." I felt the walls closing in. "I don't understand. My work performance has been excellent." "Your work quality isn't in question, but reliability and honesty are fundamental job requirements." Patricia's expression was neutral but firm. "We're not taking any formal disciplinary action at this time, but consider this a verbal warning. We need to be able to trust our employees." "Of course, absolutely. There won't be any more issues." But as I walked back to my desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that Henry's investigation was expanding beyond our marriage into every corner of my life. That afternoon, I called my sister Carla, desperate for someone to validate my perspective. "I think Henry's completely lost his mind," I told her, pacing in the parking lot during my break. "He's calling my work, investigating me like I'm some kind of criminal. It's harassment." "That's totally unacceptable," Carla said immediately. My sister had never liked Henry, always thought he was too controlling and boring for me. "You have every right to have friends and go out. He's probably just insecure because he knows he's not exciting enough to keep you interested." "Right. I mean, I haven't done anything wrong. So what if I have male friends? So what if I stay out late occasionally? I'm not his property." "Exactly. Don't let him guilt you into becoming some 1950s housewife who has to ask permission to breathe." Carla's validation felt like a lifeline, but it didn't ease the growing knot of dread in my stomach. Because deep down, I knew I was lying to her too. That evening, Henry was waiting for me in our living room, with his laptop open on the coffee table, and several manila folders arranged beside it with military precision. The sight made my mouth go dry. "We need to talk," he said without looking up from whatever he was reading. "About what?" I tried to keep my voice light and innocent, but something in his posture made my skin crawl with apprehension. "About Elliot Warren, 29 years old, bartender at Meridian Bar downtown. About the night you spent at his apartment on Elm Street. About the lies you've been telling our daughter, our families, and me for the past 2 weeks." The world seemed to tilt sideways. How could he possibly know Elliot's address? "I don't know what you're talking about." "I have dashcam footage from my mother's car showing your vehicle parked outside his building from 2:47 a.m. until 6:23 a.m. His voice remained eerily calm, like he was reading quarterly reports to a client. "I have time-stamped receipts from Meridian Bar showing purchases on your debit card until 2:15 a.m. I have witness statements from the barbecue where multiple people observed your inappropriate behavior with this man." My legs felt weak. I sank into the armchair across from him. "You had someone spy on me?" "I had someone recover deleted text messages from our phone records. Messages like, 'Last night was incredible,' and 'When can we do it again?' and 'Your husband doesn't deserve you.'" He finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold as winter stones. "Should I continue? You had someone hack my phone? That's illegal. That's invasion of privacy." "Phone records aren't private when it's a joint account under my name," Henry said matter-of-factly. "Neither are bank statements showing ATM withdrawals near his bar at 2 a.m., or credit card charges at the hotel gift shop where you bought condoms." The last detail hit me like a physical blow. I'd forgotten about that purchase, made in a haze of guilt and excitement. "Henry, please, let me explain." "I don't want explanations. I don't want justifications or excuses or more lies." His voice cut through my desperation like a blade. "For once in our marriage, I want the truth. Complete honesty. Can you give me that?" The truth. The word hung between us like a loaded gun. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt, but cold, calculating determination. "Nothing happened," I whispered, but even I could hear how hollow it sounded. "Don't." His voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't insult my intelligence anymore. I've spent 2 weeks documenting everything, Des. Every lie, every manipulation, every time you've made me feel crazy for trusting my own instincts. You're making this sound worse than it is. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, my wife had an affair, lied about it repeatedly, gaslit me when I questioned her, humiliated me in front of our family, and is still lying to my face." He closed the laptop with a soft click that sounded like a coffin closing. "What part of that assessment is incorrect?" I opened my mouth to argue, to deflect, to blame him for being boring or controlling or whatever rationalization I could grasp, but no words came. Because he was right, and we both knew it. "I want you to leave," Henry said quietly. "Tonight, go stay with Carla or your mother or wherever you want. We'll figure out the rest through lawyers. You can't kick me out of my own house." "I'm not kicking you out. I'm asking you to go voluntarily, for Maya's sake. There's a difference." "What about Maya? She's my daughter too." For the first time, Henry's composure cracked slightly, and I saw the pain he'd been hiding. "Maya deserves better than watching her parents destroy each other. She deserves stability, honesty, and respect. Things you seem incapable of providing right now." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "I'm her mother." "Then act like it." I spent 3 days at Carla's cramped apartment, calling Henry repeatedly and getting sent straight to voicemail. When I finally returned home on Thursday morning, I found the locks changed and a note taped to the front door directing me to call a lawyer named Patricia Chen. "This is kidnapping," I screamed into Henry's voicemail, standing on our front porch like a crazy person. "You can't keep me from my daughter. This is illegal." But when I called the police, they explained with bureaucratic patience that without a custody order, Henry had every right to refuse me access to the house or Maya. If I wanted to see my daughter, I'd need to go through legal channels. The lawyer Henry had hired was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who laid out my situation with brutal clarity in her downtown office. "Your husband has been very thorough," Patricia Chen said, spreading photographs and documents across her polished conference table like playing cards in a deadly game. Bank records, phone records, witness statements, photographic evidence of your vehicle at another man's residence overnight. That doesn't prove anything happened. It doesn't have to. In a no-fault divorce state, adultery isn't required for dissolution of marriage, but it is highly relevant for custody determinations and asset division. My blood ran cold. Custody? Mr. Vale is seeking primary physical custody of your daughter, with supervised visitation for you, pending completion of court-mandated counseling programs. He can't do that. Actually, he can, and given the evidence of your behavior, the lying, the overnight absences, the pattern of putting personal gratification above family responsibilities, a judge might very well agree that the child's best interests are served by remaining in the stable home environment her father provides. I felt the room spinning around me. What about the house? Our savings? I helped build that life too. Mr. Vale has frozen all joint accounts pending asset division proceedings. You'll need to find alternative housing and income sources immediately. This is insane. I made one mistake. Patricia Chen's expression didn't change. Mrs. Vale, according to the evidence your husband has compiled, this wasn't one mistake. This was a sustained pattern of deception, manipulation, and abandonment of family responsibilities. Your husband has documented everything meticulously over several weeks. She slid a thick folder across the table. These are the divorce papers. You have 30 days to respond with your own attorney, or the court will proceed with Mr. Vale's request by default. I waited outside Maya's elementary school the next day, desperate to see my daughter and explain somehow that Mommy wasn't the bad person Daddy was making her out to be. When Henry arrived for pickup in his sensible Honda Accord, I approached his car with my heart hammering. "Please," I said through his partially open window, "I just want to talk to her for 5 minutes." Henry didn't even look at me. "You need to go through the proper channels. She's my daughter too. I have rights. You had responsibilities too. You chose to abandon them." Maya appeared in the school doorway with her teacher, her little pink backpack bouncing as she walked. When she saw me standing by Daddy's car, her face lit up with pure joy. "Mommy," she called, breaking away from her teacher and running toward us. She started toward me with arms outstretched, but Henry got out of the car and gently intercepted her, kneeling down to her level. "Hey, sweetheart, we need to go home now. Grandma Linda is making your favorite cookies." "But Mummy's here." Maya looked confused, her 7-year-old brain struggling to understand why her parents weren't happy to see each other. "I know, baby. Mommy and Daddy are working through some grown-up things right now." I watched my daughter's face crumble with confusion and felt something break inside my chest like glass. This was real. This was actually happening. I was losing everything. "Henry, please," I whispered, stepping closer. "Don't do this to her. Whatever's wrong between us, don't punish Maya." "I'm not punishing anyone," he said quietly, lifting Maya into his arms. "I'm protecting her from the chaos and instability you've brought into our lives. I'm her mother. I love her. Love isn't enough, Des. Love without responsibility, without honesty, without putting her needs first. That's not love. That's selfishness disguised as love." As Henry buckled Maya into her car seat, our daughter pressed her face to the window and waved at me with tears in her eyes. "Mommy, are you coming home for dinner?" I couldn't answer. I just stood there crying as they drove away. 6 weeks later, I sat in another lawyer's office, this time with a public defender, since I couldn't afford Patricia Chen's fees, after maxing out my credit cards on a cheap apartment and basic living expenses. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following week, and my chances looked grimmer than winter. "Your husband's attorney has provided extensive documentation," my overworked public defender explained, flipping through a file thicker than a phone book. The affair, the lies, the pattern of prioritizing personal gratification over family responsibilities. They're painting a picture of someone fundamentally unfit for custody. That's not fair. I love Maya more than anything. Love isn't the issue here, Mrs. Vale. Stability is. Reliability is. Your husband has demonstrated that he provides a consistent, honest, secure environment for your daughter. What about my rights as her mother? You'll likely receive supervised visitation initially, possibly working up to unsupervised weekends, if you complete court-mandated counseling and demonstrate sustained responsible behavior over an extended period. The custody hearing was a nightmare that lasted 3 hours and felt like 3 years. Henry's lawyer presented their case with surgical precision. Photographs of my car outside Elliot's apartment, bank records showing late-night ATM withdrawals, testimony from family members and co-workers about my behavior and lies. I watched Henry answer questions with the same calm professionalism he brought to his accounting work, never raising his voice, never showing anger, just methodical, devastating honesty. Mr. Vale, how would you describe your wife's behavior in the weeks leading up to your separation? Increasingly erratic and dishonest. She would disappear for hours without explanation, lie about her whereabouts, and become hostile when questioned about her activities. How did this affect your daughter? Henry's voice caught slightly. Maya became anxious and withdrawn. She started having nightmares, asking why Mommy was angry all the time, why we were fighting. When it was my turn to testify, I tried to explain, to justify, to minimize. But every word felt like it was digging my grave deeper. Mrs. Vale, the judge said finally, do you understand the impact your actions have had on your daughter's sense of security and stability? I wanted to argue, to deflect, to blame Henry for being controlling or boring or whatever rationalization I could grasp. But looking at Maya sitting quietly beside a court advocate, clutching a stuffed animal and looking lost, I finally saw the truth. Yes, Your Honor, I whispered. The judge awarded Henry primary custody with supervised visitation for me every other Saturday. I was ordered to complete parenting classes, individual counseling, and substance abuse evaluation before any custody arrangement could be reconsidered. As we left the courthouse, Henry stopped beside his car where Maya was waiting. Des, he said quietly, I never wanted it to come to this. Yes, you did, I replied bitterly. You wanted to punish me. No, I wanted to protect our daughter from the chaos you created. There's a difference. He was right, but I was too angry and hurt to admit it. 2 years later, I moved into my third apartment since the divorce, a studio in a complex that allowed pets, though I couldn't afford one. I was working double shifts at a retail job to pay for the supervised visitation fees and court-ordered counseling. Every other Saturday, I spent 3 hours with Maya in a sterile room at the Family Services building, with a social worker taking notes on our interactions. Maya was polite, but distant now, like she was visiting a stranger she felt obligated to be nice to. She talked about her new routine with Daddy and Susan. Henry had remarried a kindergarten teacher who Maya adored. She mentioned piano lessons, soccer practice, family game nights, the stability she'd found in Henry's structured world. Do you like Susan? I asked during one visit, hating myself for fishing for information. She's really nice. She helps me with homework and she makes funny pancakes shaped like animals. Maya paused, then added with devastating honesty. She doesn't yell or disappear like you used to. Her words cut deeper than any legal judgment. Henry had built a beautiful new life without me. Stable, honest, filled with the kind of love that shows up every day instead of just when it's convenient. I learned about their wedding through social media, seeing pictures of my daughter in a flower girl dress, beaming next to her new stepmother. I'd completed my counseling and parenting classes, been granted unsupervised weekend visits, but Maya was settled now. happy in ways she'd never been when I was chasing excitement and validation at the expense of everything else. Elliot had moved to Portland within months of my divorce, claiming he needed a fresh start. I realized he'd never seen me as anything more than a fun distraction, someone else's wife providing excitement without commitment or consequences. The freedom I'd thought I wanted, the escape from suburban monotony, had cost me everything that actually mattered. I'd traded my family for the illusion of passion, my daughter's security for my own selfish desires. Now, at 35, I lived alone in a studio apartment, working retail and seeing my daughter every other weekend. Henry had built a beautiful life without me, while I was still paying the price for a few nights of excitement that had seemed so important at the time. I'd gotten exactly what I'd asked for: freedom from my boring marriage, escape from responsibility, release from the constraints of commitment. I just hadn't realized how much that freedom would cost, or how empty it would feel once I had it. Some nights, I still dreamed about that morning when Henry sat waiting with my phone in his hands. In the dreams, I made different choices. I told the truth. I chose my family over my ego, but I always woke up alone in my studio apartment with the consequences of the choices I actually made. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd wanted excitement, passion, someone who made me feel alive. Instead, I'd never felt